the reason I'm dressed decently is not for the Jay Leno show. It's a lot more important. It's March. That means it's time to engage with SARS. Nathaniel Mabetwa, Group Executive of Branch Operations at Revenue Services, joins us tonight. Nathaniel, thank you very much for joining us in the studio.
Thank you, Jeremy.
This is your busy time of the year, I would imagine. Or does it ever stop at SARS? Is it always busy?
Actually, it's always busy because you run into the filing season, and immediately after the filing season, you go into the financial year end, which is when we collect all the money. Right. By the 31st of March. So it really is, we have a cyclical kind of business kind of, processes, but really it's quite busy throughout the year.
Now, there's sort of a love-hate relationship here. You know, I want to be your friend. I want you to be my friend. How much of a friend are you to me? I mean, what is, because there have been fundamental changes at SARS in the last 14 years.
Yes. We want to believe that we are friendly to those people that are willing to come forward and work with us. I think, let's put this quite clearly, that when you look at the compliance model that we use, it basically says that SARS will respond appropriately on the basis of the response of the taxpayer. So the first thing we do is to try and educate people. So we engage people, we educate them, we make sure that they understand their tax obligations and their obligations as fiscal citizens of this country, you know, in terms of what they need to do to support the government and the country and the well-being of the country. So that's the first thing. The second thing we do is to go beyond the engagement and say, now that you know what you need to do, can you then go on and do it? All right? Can you start filing? Can you start making sure that you pay the dues and so on and so on? And at that level, the treatment is still very a good one. We work with you, you work with us, we are there for you, we support you. That's why we have all the branch offices throughout the country. That's why we have established a contact center that's working extremely well in terms of the response rate and so on. In fact, we are compared to the best in the world in terms of our response rate and so on. In the past, well, it's been in establishment, it's been established for the past 5 years, I think. And then the last part of this thing is around saying, if we've done everything else, so the education, the engagement, we've assisted you to comply. If you don't comply, then we get to a stage where we say we absolutely have to start being tough with you. Now,
Dave King knows about that.
well, that's one of the approaches we take. You know? So if really you're not coming to the party, we have to now start being tough. And we do that not because we don't like taxpayers or anything, but because in actual fact, if we are not going to be tough on those ones that are not compliant, it means that we are saying to the rest that are compliant that it does not matter for you to be non-compliant. So it's important for us to then take a tough stance to those people that don't want to come to the party.
What is our base? How many people are paying tax in this country, more or less?
Well, on register for individuals, we have 5.9 million. I'll come back to that. For businesses, we are sitting at 1.9 million registered business entities. And that is for CIT, corporate income tax. And then we have 685,000 that are registered for VAT. Okay, so that's the landscape. That's what we have on our register. Now, someone might be thinking, look, 5.9 million people on register individuals, but we probably have about 8.1 or so people that are employed. And also, there is a perception that the 5.9 million are carrying the rest of the 42 million people in South Africa, you know, which we need to just make sure that we put into context. Remember that the 5.9 million people that are paying tax, as in the individuals that are on register, pay through the payroll system. But there are other people that are paying tax through VAT as they buy from, you know, normal consumption and so on. And those individuals also pay tax. There are those people who pay through, you know, the fuel levy and so on. So there are a number of other taxes that people pay. So when we look at the people that are on register, we must take into account that it is not only the 5.9 million that are paying, it's everybody else that is paying. It's just that they may be paying indirectly into the fiscus, but they contribute as well.
I understand that. I want to come back to that in just a moment. But one of the points that I think we need to raise here as well is the amount of people who are drawing benefits out of the fiscus, because that's huge. I heard a number the other day that it's around about 15 million people. So are we as taxpayers in any form whatsoever starting to fund a welfare state?
Very important question. I think this was also addressed by the President in the State of the Nation address. Look, it's a balance between being a state that is purely a welfare state and a state that is responsible towards its citizens and taking into account the nature of the kind of issues that we're dealing with. So, I mean, if you look at where we've come from and you look at the kind of challenges that we have, I think the state has to take some role without necessarily turning into a nanny state, if we want to call it that. But I don't think that those are sustainable. And I think, you know, everybody has been on record saying that. Ideally, you want to create jobs.
Yeah.
Ideally, you want to get everybody to have the dignity of going to work every morning and earning their money.
And then paying tax.
And then paying tax, and then being active participants in the economy, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that has been addressed even in the speech by the Minister of Finance, in the speech by the President. So going forward, I think we need to move towards that. I was talking to someone the other day about the fact that this whole thing of paying grants to, you know, mothers and so on for kids, and whether we can continue with that indefinitely. And my view, as I expressed then and I'll express now, is that in the short run, it's important. Short term, it's important that we do that. But I think as the country starts to grow, as we start to grow the economy, creating more jobs, which is a bigger challenge that we have actually in this country, then we need to move people out of that dependence, you know, on state grants, because it's just not sustainable. Now, turning to jobs, which is a big issue, you know, if you look at what the IDC and all the others are doing in terms of this, and what Treasury was saying around the wage subsidy and so on, there are some nice ideas that are coming through, and exciting too. But I think generally as South Africans, we need to start looking beyond what the government is going to do for us and start thinking, what is it that I can do to create jobs?
But doesn't this then present a case for tax breaks for small and medium businesses in the country? Because I know a fair amount of people who watch this show are self-employed people who've created and are creating jobs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. that is the direction that we're taking. I mean, if you look at the wage subsidy proposals that are going to be discussed at NEDLAC and so on, those go beyond just looking at saying, we'll give you a tax break. They're saying, how do you create a sustainable job for someone? How do you create an industry that is going to grow from, you know, where it is going to start to you know, 10 years time in terms of what it creates and so on. So those are the types of things that small businesses out there need to start to think about. And if you look at what has been proposed even in terms of the current budget, there is the turnover tax proposal that was put on the table as well. Remember, about 2 years ago, this was introduced for the first time in South Africa, where we were saying that for a small business, it's usually very difficult to comply with all the different things, the forms that you must complete and so on.
Yeah.
And in simplifying that, we said that deregister for all the other taxes and register for only one tax, which is turnover tax, all right? For all the small businesses below, making a turnover of below $1 million per annum. We have people that have taken it up. But it is not all of them that have come onto it. And the reason that was put forward to some of us in terms of why some did not take it up is the fact that for you to qualify for turnover tax, you have to deregister for VAT. And when you interact and you have dealings and you do business with other, you know, businesses, they require you to have a VAT number.
Okay.
Right? So you can't deregister for VAT and say, no, I'm registered for turnover tax. Hence, this change that has now come through with this proposal now that says even though you're registered for turnover tax, you can still register for VAT, which therefore, you know, makes it easier for more people to come on board in as far as this is concerned.
Are we, and I say we, generally South Africans,
Yeah.
are we easy to deal with? From a SARS point of view, do you fight to get money out of us, or do we step up to the plate and accept our responsibility as tax-paying citizens of this country generally?
Generally, I think there are a lot of people that are willing to cooperate, that understand their responsibility or responsibilities as fiscal citizens. I think there's still a long way to go in terms of the compliance levels. If you look at our compliance levels and where we're sitting as a country, you know, we are probably sitting, you know, not as highly as we should be in terms of the ranking compared to other developing countries. Because I think that there's still a level of ignorance from a tax obligation point of view. So I want to say that it could be that a lot of people are not compliant, not because they don't want to comply, but because they don't understand the tax obligations. And because they're afraid to come forward, because they are ignorant in as far as how the money is deducted from their salaries and paid over to SARS. Every year, when we have filing season, we have long queues of people that stand outside our offices. And I've walked to those queues and, you know, spoke to some people. Each time I ask a simple question, why are you here? I pick up that there's a lot of ignorance on the part of people. Others say, I'm here because I was told that if I come here, I will qualify for a refund, you know. I'm going to submit these forms and then I'll qualify. And you look at the kind of forms that they think that, you know, they will have to submit to get. And those are not the kind of forms that we need. But somebody somewhere, you know, has said that to them. In South Africa, we have about 26,000 or so tax practitioners that assist taxpayers. They represent about 1.7 million people. But if you look at 5.9 million people versus 1.7 million people that are represented by tax
there are a lot of them out there.
A lot of them who are not, who are doing it themselves. They don't know. They walk into the branch. So I think there's an element of ignorance, but over time we can actually assist them to make sure that they comply.
Encourage small and medium business owners to employ more staff by providing tax breaks for creating additional sustainable jobs. The South African Revenue Services is an example of an efficient government department. That was in the Business Day, an article written by Simon Mantle on Monday last week. What makes SARS efficient? More with Nathaniel Mabetwa when we come back.